And now it's time for another edition of What Would Jello Do? Da-da-dun, da-dun, da-da-dun, da-da-dun. It still hasn't gotten old, has it? It's still the best greeting you can send out to people, maybe even on the 4th of July at the rate we're going. How many of you out there have seen a wild 60s underground movie called Putney Swope? Yes, Putney Swope, directed by Robert Downey Sr., actually. And it's about a stodgy old advertising agency in New York, and they're having their board meeting, and way down at the end, you barely see him, is the token black executive Putney Swope. In comes the head of the company, going all kinds of crazy, choking on words. Eventually, he drops dead, face first, on his desk. So they have to elect a new chairman, and everybody, by secret ballot, votes for Putney Swope because they think no one else will, and they feel sorry for him. So he becomes chairman of the board and immediately fires all the white people except for one and replaces them with all kinds of wild representatives and parodies of black art, culture, activism, everything else, and says they're no longer going to sell anything to do with toy guns or alcohol or tobacco. All the clients are gone, but then all these wacky clients come in instead. The ethereal cereal commercial, for example, is never to be forgotten. And apparently Downey even voiced the actor Arnold Johnson's lines because Arnold kept forgetting them all. Perhaps because the partying on the screen extended off the screen. Now they've got all these new clients, many of them white, and they're all required to pay Putney Swope in big bags of actual cash, which is then passed like sandbags all the way down several floors and thrown in this great big glass container the size of a see-through elevator in the bottom. And eventually, as all hell breaks more and more loose and authorities are getting a little weird on it, finally one disgruntled guy who called the Arab, who has a little headband and what seems like a handkerchief down there, who always doesn't think Putney's doing enough, got a light, and he burns all the money. And then that's the end of the movie. Well, that is what the Trump White House is right about now, and has been for what, 4 weeks? 4 months, maybe even 4 years. You'll never take back your country with weakness. Read Chocula. Let's have trial by combat. We're going to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue, and I'm going to be with you. They didn't even show up. Again, no leadership, no coordination. They just left all those people who showed up to riot for them in the lurch so they could watch them on TV in the safety of the White House. Coup? What coup? Maybe that's what he wanted, but imagine that attempted coup against the real Pentagon. Homeland Security, the spooks, the riot squad. I mean, the Pentagon was better prepared for when Abby Hoffman was going to surround the whole Pentagon and levitate it, and all kinds of military brass thought he could actually do that somehow because he was one of these freaky yippie people that got all scared and everything. I mean, these people had as little chance of taking over the country as Antifa trying to fight the Oath Keepers one-on-one. Trump really thought the military would storm in and back him? Really? You don't burn bridges with your spooks. You don't drive out your generals and then call soldiers and veterans losers over and over and over again, then expect them to come running to the rescue and kill people for you in some kind of a coup. So now you've got these people left in the lurch like the woman with her own Learjet coming in from Texas. You're arresting us? Well, we just did what you said. I was just following orders, in other words, just like My Lai and all the rest. We just got caught up in it. Caught up in what? You want to overthrow a real entrenched government with its army and police and all the people with the money on their side. You need Fidel Castro. You need Mao Zedong. Where was their Castro? They didn't even have one. Certainly not Donald Trump Jr. Works worse than a beer than about anybody I can think of. They didn't even have Ted Nugent. They didn't even have Don Jr. We stormed into the Capitol. It's the real revolution. Hey, look, here, we're going into the Senate. Now what do we do? Should we set up a government now, says one, in a very similar voice to Butthead, I might add. Well, this is what revolution's all about. Let's take selfies. And more selfies and more selfies. This is what it's about. Party! Maybe those D.C. Capitol cops handing them the water were actually part of the deep state's plot here because they dosed them all. Don't these people realize that if there ever really is a civil war, it's the entire country versus them, and the Boogaloo Boys and the rest are going to be gone in a matter of hours? Yes, they should be punished. But for what? Trespassing? They can't figure out what to charge them with, except for some of the top ones. How about making it illegal to be militantly stupid? Man, oh, what are we going to do? We're going to show up and we're going to piss all over Martin Luther King. That's what we're going to do. Sunday, nobody showed up. They were all ready with the news. Nobody showed up. Was this another TikTok prank? I don't know. There was those half dozen people with their guns and their Don't Tread on Me flag wandering around in front of the Oregon State Capitol building. Oh, we're the only ones here? Yep. Seahawks out of the playoffs, man. Yep. Kind of like Hank Hill's friends. Yep. And that was how they overthrew the government that day. But for crying out loud, be careful with throwing around terms, let alone criminal charges like sedition and branding all kinds of people terrorists. FBI billboards, I found several just driving today, all wanting us to report seditionaries and terrorists and everything else. CNN runs a special, we're going to hunt all of you down. Isn't that the exact same language and the exact same attitude as William Barr versus Black Lives Matter and labeling all kinds of people Antifa? Remember when Occupy got labeled terrorists, and they even did an entrapment on some kids in Cleveland to charge them with terror crimes and stuff? Be careful what you ask for. As far as I know, there's still laws on the book from Reagan and before aiding, abetting a terrorist organization, aiding and abetting. And that was written where you could even go to prison for a very long time for giving Nelson Mandela a ride to the airport, because for a long time the African National Congress was still listed as a terrorist organization. Labeling people, saying they're terrorists, guilty of sedition, has a long, ugly history in this country. The Sedition Act of 1798 against what was called the Quasi-War, which I'd never even heard of before I looked into this. It was America not versus Britain, it was America and versus Britain versus France over raids on ships and stuff. Then quickly got abused by the second president, John Adams, to accuse people who published newspapers supporting Thomas Jefferson of sedition. Yeah. Then after World War I, you got the Sedition Act of 1918, which touched off what was called the Palmer Raids, named after the Attorney General and a complete fascist named A. Mitchell Palmer, where they were jailing people for years on grounds that it was sedition because they criticized the war effort. And of course, it was funny, how many people, those who got rounded up, were also involved in labor unions and labor uprisings, even Wobblies, who they really wanted to get rid of. Eugene Debs ran for president for the 4th time as a socialist, but because of the Sedition Act of 1918, he had to run from jail in 1920, where he still got almost 1 million votes and 3.5% of the total. We don't need to do this to combat what we saw going after the Capitol building any more than we ever needed the Patriot Act to go around, send the FBI around to bookstores and libraries to find out who's reading supposedly wicked books. I mean, you've got the kill Pelosi people, the hang Mike Pence people. There's other laws for that. It's called threatening the lives of the Speaker, the Vice President, the President of the United States. Of course, selectively enforced against different people, where somebody says something like that because they're angry in a bar, nothing happens to them, and then somebody maybe more like us says it, and they could be looking at a long sentence. I mean, there's such a chill factor already that when Agronautics, that company that made the bobblehead of me several years ago and has made dwarves ones, Keith Morris one, I think a G.G. Allen one, they wanted to make another one of me, and Trump had just stolen the 2016 election, and Kathy Griffin had just lost her job co-hosting New Year's Eve with Amy Vanderbilt's son, Anderson Cooper, and she holds up this bloody head of Trump and she loses her job. So to show solidarity with Kathy Griffin, because not only did I think it was funny, I thought it was very apropos, I wanted the bobblehead to be holding up a bloody Trump, and Agronautics said no way because we're too scared the government is going to bust us for threatening the life of the President of the United States. Even as a joke? With sick humor? When was the last time we heard from Dirty Donnie Trump-a-muck, that quick little contrite speech where he's trying to be all mellowed, please don't impeach me, when there were probably guns aimed at his head from both sides right off the screen? The reason we haven't heard from him is he's been so busy figuring out who he's going to pardon and who he's not going to pardon. The report that Giuliani wanted $2 million a pardon, who knows, maybe Trump told him to ask for $1 million and he was going to steal the other $1 million. Have no idea. But that guy is so nuts now that he demanded Trump pay his bills even before he could get his own pardon. So now he may not get one. So assume that Trumpsy is tried in the Senate and enough people find conscience or other reasons on the Repug side to convict him, then what happens? Who sentences him? To what? Where? If you have to retry him in a civilian court on the same charges, isn't that double jeopardy? But watch a bunch of these people say, oh yeah, we had to vote to convict, a bunch of Republicans, but then they will vote against banning him in office because that way they can still look like they like Trump to all those Trumpsy voters, but at the same time make sure that they've cleared the deck for 2024 so they can be president instead. Don't just watch Ted Cruz on that one. Watch Lindsey Graham and all the other ones. No, we shouldn't have any kind of an impeachment trial at all. It's just going to divide the country. We need to heal the country. We need unity. Heal what? Unite everybody around what? Around who? Biden? If the Supreme Court does rule that Trump pardoning himself is okay and he's banking on Kavanaugh leading the way, will Biden and the Democrats finally have the spine to add at least 4 justices to the Supreme Court? No more filibuster, please. After what happened on the 6th, I now admit that now finally I too think Trump was an even more divisive president than Richard Nixon, and I had to live through that too. But I hope that doesn't mean all Biden wants to accomplish in the next 4 years is to be the Democrats' version of Gerald Ford. That worries me a lot. No unity without accountability. And that means no get out of jail free cards. You give that to people, it's going to divide the country even more and guarantee somebody worse than Trump gets in 2024 and takes over Congress in 2022. Well, can't we all just get along? No, we can't all get along. We never, ever have. Unity? What about diversity? What about different visions and opinions? That's what real democracy is and what America was supposed to be all along. USA, always divided. Even in 4th grade, 9 years old, what was that, 67, 68? Everybody knew who was for and who was against the Vietnam War. Did we argue? You bet we did. 5th grade, half the class voted for Nixon. Another good wake-up call for somebody like me who was so convinced all my views and opinions were right, I'm everybody in this room must agree with me on it. Well, no, they didn't. The main result of the 5th grade one was the witch hunt that went on, trying to figure out who voted for George Wallace. One person did. Well, we need to reach across the aisle. Biden says, oh, I'm so good at reaching across the aisle because I'm always on McConnell's side anyway behind. Well, no. Reach across the aisle now without a Scotty vest full of grenades? I don't think so. That sure didn't work for Obama, did it? Or the guy who was supposed to crack the whip in the Senate like LBJ was supposed to do for Kennedy, Joe Biden. Now, you reach across the aisle, all you're going to get is, hang Mike Pence! Hang Mike Pence! Trump saying, oh yeah, the people in Michigan, they're really great people. Governor Whitner should just go downstairs and talk to them. Make a deal. It is now true, she would have been killed. Pelosi and Alejandro Ocasio-Cortez, she detailed how frightened she was that even some of the Congress creatures in that very room they were hiding out in might well kill her. And if the other people got in, they would kill her. And she feared for her life to the point where she was starting to have the stuff go through her head, like supposedly goes through your head when you're about to die. I felt horrible that it came to that. I felt like I wanted to reach into the TV screen and just give her a hug or something. Ilhan Omar, another one who's been dealing with daily death threats even before she got elected. She has 3 children she has to worry about too. Now, even some of the Republicans are saying because they voted to impeach Trump or they aren't extreme right enough and they even want to hang Mike Pence, they too are now fearing for their lives. All I have to say to that is, well, ha ha ha. Now you get to feel like it does, that some people go through this every day of their lives and have since they were a kid, worried that that might be the day they get blown away by some cop who's shooting them for sport after pulling them over for driving while black or brown. Now you guys get to feel that too. Are you waking up yet? And they're saying, yeah, we've got 25,000 National Guard and military and D.C. Capitol Police. They're so reliable after all. And others all surrounding the White House for Biden's inauguration. You know, more than Iraq and Afghanistan combined. The fence, so many fences are going to have little tiny Bidens so far away, you're going to feel like you're at a Live Nation show or something like that. Instead, maybe what they should just do is get some of those plastic cardboard people like they put in baseball stadiums and football stadiums because of COVID and just make them all the soldiers. After all, they didn't even show up to piss on Dr. King, but they're really not taking chances, I guess, because Biden has publicly announced that he's switching all his Secret Service personnel from the ones Trump had that were specifically trained, the most skilled of the most skilled, to protect the life of the president, fearing that not all those Secret Service people protecting Trump would really do their job if somebody went after him. That's getting pretty scary. He mainly got people from the old vice president one and some new ones because he doesn't trust them. And all know how they're going to do all 25,000 of them, but the FBI is supposedly vetting every single one of those National Guard troops and the others to see if there's going to be anybody who's actually a mole from for the neo-Nazis who are going to try a, quote, inside attack. Well, in spite of that, oh, how are we going to find common ground? Well, there is one place where I find a lot of common ground, even with the QAnon clowns and the dude with the horns and everything else. And that is, I say hell yeah to a massive investigation of vote fraud. Not just this election, but past elections. Not just a few states that they thought Trump should have been able to steal, all of them, and all the attempts to steal that may have worked and cost a whole bunch of people their legislative seats. How about a massive investigation of the real vote fraud chaired by somebody like Stacey Abrams? And maybe you could put on it Greg Palast Or Bob Fitrakis from Columbus, Ohio, who documented how that state helped W steal a second election he didn't win, thus ensuring that 5 of the 9 Supreme Court justices, until they expanded hopefully, were appointed by presidents who stole their elections and know damn well they shouldn't even be there at all. Trump owes 2016 to vote fraud. And Chris Kobach's interstate cross-check program, documented at length in Greg Palast's The Best Democracy Money Can Buy film documentary. Among other places, that is the real vote fraud, way more widespread and way, way worse. Jim Crow 2.0. Gerrymandering, cross-check in 29 states who agreed to use it and kick out people whose names were like Washington if they were black, Martinez, whatever. That's the real vote fraud. It still goes on in Georgia, or there wouldn't even been a Senate runoff. And Brian Kemp, who proudly claimed he had, 50,000 people trying to register to vote on his desk, most of them black, I'm just not going to process them, and he gets to be governor instead of Stacey Abrams. That is the real vote fraud. 2016, that so-called deep state was helping Trump. Especially James Comey, talking about emails again of Hillary's 5 days before the vote and obscuring the grab him by the pussy comment. Comey is still trying to help him, even though he got fired, with a whole new book out on why we shouldn't impeach Trump again or try him or put him away for any crimes, get out of jail free, because otherwise it'll divide the country too much. Get out of jail free not only divides the country too much, it gives everybody who gets out of jail free a free pass to do even worse stuff now that they know they are not going to be busted. Real coup was 2016. The corporate coup's been going on for a long time, so all those clowns in the Capitol should have been yelling, "Renew the coup, renew the coup, renew the coup." No, this commission should not just get to the bottom of 2020, but 2016 and 2018 and 2004 and 2000. If you have to go all the way back to 1960 and find out how many dead people in Chicago voted for John F. Kennedy and tipped that state away from Tricky Dick Nixon, go ahead. I'm not worried about them finding 11 million lost votes for Trump this time. I don't think they're there. And and another reason to have this is to prove, so they can actually, hopefully it'll dawn on them that maybe they've been duped, even to the horny guy with a QAnon staff and stuff, that Biden's didn't steal 2020. Somehow show them that they were duped. And it's very hard for people caught up in cult followings to admit they were wrong, even to themselves, but then finally show all America just where the real vote fraud really is, thus showcasing what we need to do to stop it.